The wedding is in 3 hours. I'm standing in front of the mirror in the dressing room, holding a glass of water I don't remember pouring, and I am perfectly, completely calm. That's the thing about this life. The second time through, calm is easy, not because nothing hurts, but because I already know how the day ends. I watch myself in the mirror. The dress is pale gold, which our mother chose because gold looks better on Celeste's complexion, not mine. My hair is pinned in a style that is technically elegant and practically invisible next to the waterfall of dark waves our mother has been coaxing into shape on Celeste's head for the last 90 minutes. I have a small pearl earring in my left ear and nothing in my right, because I dropped the other one behind the vanity this morning, and I decided not to look for it. The first time I lived this day, I cried about that earring for 20 minutes. Today I look at my single earring in the mirror and I almost smile. The door opens behind me. "Vivi, Mother wants you," says a voice. I know the way I know the sound of rain. My sister's voice, Celeste. Low and practiced and warm in the way that only beautiful people learn to be warm, as though warmth is an accessory they've learned to put on. "I'll be there in a moment," I say. She lingers. I can see her reflection behind me in that pale ivory gown, her dark hair pinned with jasmine flowers. She is breathtaking. She was breathtaking the first time I lived this too, and I hated myself for how badly I wanted her to see me. Today, I just take a sip of my water. "You look nice," she says finally, and there it is. Not "you look beautiful," not "you look stunning." Just nice, the word you give someone when the truth would cost you nothing but you want to spend even less. "Thank you," I say. "You look exactly like what you planned." She laughs. She thinks it's a compliment. I set down my water glass. I pick up my small clutch bag, and I walk out to join the rest of the family, with 3 hours to go and everything I need already inside me. Let me tell you what I know. I know that on this day, the day of the Ashford-Calloway engagement celebration, Roland Ashford is supposed to announce his formal intention to marry Celeste. I know that this announcement has been arranged between our mother and Roland's father for the better part of 2 years. I know that Celeste knows this and has performed the role of devoted future bride with the kind of discipline that I frankly have always admired in her, even when I hated what it was in service of. And I know something else, something that, in my first life, I did not know until it was far, far too late. Roland Ashford does not want to marry my sister. He never did. I carry this knowledge through the corridor of the Calloway house, past the flowers our mother ordered in Celeste's favorite colors, dusty rose, cream champagne, past the caterers moving in quick practice lines through the kitchen, past the photograph on the wall that has hung there my entire life. Celeste at 6 in a white dress standing on the lawn, just her. No one else in the frame. Our mother had 1,000 photographs of us. She chose that one for the wall. The first time I walked past that photograph on this day, it cut me. I remember exactly how it felt. A small, clean slice, the kind you don't notice until you see the blood. Today, I notice the frame is slightly crooked, and I straighten it as I pass. What I did not understand in my first life was that the photograph was never about me. It was about her. It was always about her. Her need to have produced someone beautiful, someone obvious, someone the world would recognize immediately as valuable. Celeste was proof of something. I was just the other one, the spare, the plain sister. That was my identity for 32 years, and then I died. And then I woke up here on this morning, 3 years before any of the things I most regret, with full memory of everything that followed. I'm not going to tell you it felt like a gift. It didn't, not at first. It felt like being locked back inside a room you'd just barely escaped. But then I thought about Roland, about the look on his face at the end. That specific look, the one I saw only once, the night before my first life ended, when it was too late for either of us. And I thought, not this time, Iris is in the garden. She's the only person here today who wasn't invited to perform a role, which is probably why she's the only person who looks comfortable. She's sitting on the stone bench near the hydrangeas with a glass of something pink in her hand, wearing a dress that is slightly too casual for the occasion and absolutely perfect for her, reading what appears to be a folded piece of paper she found somewhere. "What is that?" I ask, sitting down beside her. "Someone's seating chart," she says without looking up. "They put me at table 9 Vivienne, with the cousins nobody talks to and the man from Roland's office who apparently cannot stop discussing tidal energy. His name is Douglas Holt." I say. "He's actually interesting." She looks at me. "You've met him?" "I've done my research." I reach over and take a small sip of her pink drink. Elderflower and something. "He's Roland's oldest friend. He's the only person in that entire company who will tell Roland things he doesn't want to." Here, Iris folds the seating chart with great ceremony and tucks it into her clutch. "You know," she says, "sometimes the way you know things before they happen is genuinely unsettling." I smile. "I pay attention. Everyone pays attention, darling. You catalog." I look out over the garden. The roses our mother planted when Celeste was born are in full bloom. They're extraordinary. She planted them for Celeste, but they've grown for years without anyone in particular, tall and heavy and completely indifferent to the purpose they were given. "Iris," I say, keeping my voice even, "at some point today, Roland Ashford is going to look for me. When he does, I need you to not make it strange." She is very quiet for a moment. "He's about to be announced as your sister's intended," she says carefully. "I know. So when you say he's going to look for you, I mean exactly what I said. She turns her glass in her hands. I can feel her working through it. Iris, who has known me since we were 12, who watched my first life with me and never knew what she was watching. She can feel that something is different about me today. She's been able to feel it for weeks. She hasn't asked yet. She's been waiting for me to tell her. All right, she says finally. I won't make it strange, thank you. I do reserve the right to make it strange later, she adds. I'd expect nothing less. She reaches over and adjusts the single pearl earring in my left ear, which has been listing slightly to the left, and says nothing. That's the thing about Iris. She notices everything. She just chooses her moments. Roland Ashford arrives at noon. I watch from the upstairs window. He comes in a dark car with his father, Edmund Ashford, who is exactly what you'd expect of a man who has spent 50 years accumulating money and the right to be obeyed, large, deliberate, perpetually satisfied. He gets out of the car first and looks at the house the way people look at things they're already planning to own. Roland gets out second. He's taller than his father, darker. He stands next to Edmund and listens to something Edmund says. And then he looks up, directly, precisely, at the window where I am standing, and for one suspended second we are looking at each other. I don't move. He doesn't look away. And then our mother appears at the front door with Celeste on her arm, and the moment dissolves, and Roland's face arranges itself into something appropriate, and the performance begins. I remember the first time I watched this from the window. I remember thinking that he was looking at the house. I told myself that for years. He was looking at the house. He was just looking at the house. The things we tell ourselves. I step back from the window. I go and sit on the edge of my bed in the room where I've slept since childhood. The smaller room, the one without the window seat, the one that gets morning light instead of evening. And I put my hands in my lap and I breathe. I have a plan. It is not a revenge plan, exactly. I want to be clear about that. There is no version of this where I want anyone to suffer. Celeste is not evil. My mother is not a monster. They are people who are given a story about me. Plain Vivienne, practical Vivienne, the useful one, the capable one, the invisible one. And they believed it because believing it was convenient. What I want is simpler than revenge. I want the story to end differently. I want to stop the machine that ground everyone down in my first life. Celeste, most of all, though she never knew it. I want Roland to choose what he actually wants before his father's arrangements make the choice for him. And I want, just once, to be seen clearly. Not as better than Celeste, not as a consolation, as myself. Is that so much to want? I think about the look on Roland's face in my first life. The night before the end. The way he said my name. Like it was something he'd been holding in his chest for a very long time and had just finally said out loud. Too late for it to matter. No, it is not too much to want. The formal luncheon is everything it was designed to be. Our mother has placed me at the end of the family table, which is either the position of least importance or the position of best visibility, depending on how you look at it. I sit between a distant aunt who speaks exclusively about property values and Douglas Holt, who has clearly already been introduced to Iris and is bearing it with remarkable grace. She told me I have the energy of a man who alphabetizes his condiments, Douglas says, very quietly, from the corner of his mouth. Do you? I ask. A pause. That's not the point. I turn to look at him properly for the first time today. Douglas Holt is not what people see when they look at him. What they see is tall, mild, slightly forgettable, the perpetual second in command. What he actually is, and what I know from my first life, when I finally had enough time to pay attention, is the most honest person in any room he's ever in. He doesn't say much. But what he says is always true. She also told me, he says, that you're the one worth knowing at this table. Iris has strong opinions. She seems like the kind of person who's usually right. I look down the long table to where Roland is seated beside Celeste, listening to Edmund tell a story that requires a fair amount of arm movement. Roland is watching his father with an expression that is politely attentive and completely empty. I know that expression. I spent years not recognizing it for what it was. He doesn't want this, Douglas says. The words land so quietly, so precisely, that for a moment I wonder if I imagine them. I look at Douglas. He's staring at the breadbasket with tremendous focus. I know, I say. He looks at me then, really looks at me, and I see the small recalibration happen, the way his face adjusts, the way people's faces always adjust when they realize you are not the person they were told to expect. How long have you known? He asks. Longer than I should have, I say honestly. He nods slowly. He doesn't say it, he just endures. He's been enduring things since he was 17. I know, I say again. Douglas tears a piece of bread, looks at it, sets it down. Someone should tell him, he says. That enduring isn't the same as living. Someone will, I say. He glances at me sideways, quickly, and then goes back to his bread. The afternoon shifts. After lunch, our mother orchestrates a series of small social arrangements in the way she has always orchestrated family life, with enormous invisible effort and total plausible deniability. She steers Celeste toward the garden with Edmund and the elder aunts. She guides Roland toward the study where our father's old books still live. She disappears into the kitchen to supervise the evening setup. She does not steer me anywhere. She never does. I find Roland in the study. He's standing at the window, a different window from the one I watched him from, with his hands in his pockets. looking at the same roses I was looking at this morning. He hasn't heard me come in. I stand just inside the doorway and I watch him for a moment. He is, I should say, not conventionally what people mean when they say handsome. He's striking in the way that certain landscapes are striking. Not because they're pretty, but because there's something about them that stops you. Something about the quality of attention in his face, even when he thinks no one is watching. Especially when he thinks is watching. The roses were planted the year Celeste was born, I say. He turns. He's not startled, I notice that. He simply turns, finds me, and waits. My mother planted them. I continue, stepping into the room. She says they're the most difficult variety to maintain. She spends probably 6 hours a week on them. They're impressive, Roland says. His voice is measured, careful. She never spent 6 hours a week on anything for me, I say pleasantly. But I don't begrudge her the roses. They really are beautiful. There is a silence. I sit down on the arm of the old reading chair, the leather one, cracked at the corners, that smells like old paper, and I look at him. You don't know me, I say. Not really. We've met at 4 family events in 2 years, and we've exchanged perhaps 300 words total. You know my name is Vivienne, that I work in urban planning, and that I don't drink champagne. He blinks. You don't drink champagne? I prefer still water or good whiskey. Nothing in between, a pause, and then something shifts in his face, very small, very brief, and I think it might be the beginning of something like amusement. I didn't know that, he says. No, I agree. You didn't. I stand up. I'm not going to linger. I know exactly how long a first real conversation should last, and we've just reached the outer edge of it. I'll see you at dinner, Roland, I say, and I walk out. I make it to the hallway before I allow myself to exhale. My hands are completely steady. My heart is not, but that's all right. The heart can do what it likes as long as the hands stay steady. Celeste finds me before dinner. I'm in the small sitting room, the one off the main hall that no one uses anymore, sitting in the blue chair by the cold fireplace with a glass of whiskey, just as described, reading nothing in particular, existing quietly inside my own head. She comes in without knocking, which is also as described, because Celeste has never developed the instinct that other people's closed doors are a kind of communication. She sits on the footstool across from me, which is an uncomfortably low seat, and she doesn't seem to care. This is one of the things I've always struggled to explain about my sister. The moments when she stops performing and just is. And those moments are never evil. They're just Celeste, a little careless, a little searching, real. Do you like him? She asks. I keep my face quiet. Who, Roland? She picks a small piece of nothing off her skirt. You talked to in Father's study. We exchange pleasantries. You don't exchange pleasantries. She says this simply, without accusation. You have conversations or you have silence. You don't do the middle thing. I look at her. She is watching me with something that looks very much like uncertainty, which is an expression I have not seen on Celeste's face very often. In my first life, I spent so long being angry at her, at the performance, at the favoritism, at the effortlessness of her beauty, that I forgot to notice these moments. The moments when she was just a person who wasn't sure. He's interesting, I say carefully. He is, she says, and then quieter. He's interesting in a way I don't quite know what to do with. I set my glass down very slowly. This is new. She did not say this in my first life, or she might have, and I wasn't listening. What do you mean? I ask. She is quiet for a long time. The sitting room is very still. Through the window, the garden is going gray-blue with the early evening, and the roses have closed for the night, and the caterers are setting candles on the long tables outside. I mean, she says finally, that I know what he is on paper. I know what this arrangement means. I know what Mother wants and what Edmund wants and what our families want. She smooths her skirt. I just sometimes wonder if anyone has asked him what he wants. The room is very quiet. Have you asked him? I say. She laughs. A small, strange laugh, the kind that isn't really happy. I wouldn't know how. I sit with that for a moment. The honest answer, the real answer, is already pressing at the back of my throat. No one in this family knows how to ask that question. Not even you, Celeste, who was given everything, because what you were given was a role, not a life, and you stepped into it so early you think the role is you. But I don't say that. It's too much, too soon. And for the first time I am genuinely unsure what Celeste is asking me. You should talk to him. I say, really talk to him. She stands up, smoothing her dress. The uncertainty is already closing over, the performance coming back like a curtain going down. I should go check on Mother, she says, Celeste. She pauses at the door. You asked if I like him. The more relevant question is whether you do. She doesn't answer. She just goes out into the hall and closes the door softly behind her. I sit in the blue chair for a long time after that, listening to the house. Dinner begins at 7, and here is where the trap was set, I know this. I have watched it spring once already, and I felt the teeth of it. My mother's arrangement for the evening was designed with beautiful precision. Celeste seated at Roland's right, Edmund Ashford at the head, our mother at Edmund's side, and me, as always, at the far end of the table, next to Douglas and 2 of the elder Calloway cousins who will not remember my name tomorrow. In my first life, this is where I stayed, all evening. Polite and quiet and invisible, watching from the far end while my sister laughed and leaned and performed, while my mother angled the conversation toward the announcement, while Edmund Ashford nodded with the satisfaction of a man watching a transaction, complete. And then the announcement came, and everyone raised their glasses, and I raised mine too, and that was that. Tonight is different. Not because I do anything dramatic. There is no scene, no interruption, no confrontation. What happens is simpler and stranger, and I do not entirely plan it. Halfway through the first course, Roland excuses himself from the table. Briefly, politely, and Douglas, who has been watching me the entire evening with a quiet, considering look, says under his breath, he goes to the kitchen garden. When he needs air, he's been doing it for years. I look at Douglas. He's been enduring since he was 17, Douglas says. Someone should tell him he doesn't have to. I fold my napkin, I set it on my chair, I say, to the cousin on my right, excuse me for a moment, and I walk toward the kitchen garden. I find Roland there, standing among the herbs in the dark looking up. The sky is clear. There are more stars than there should be over a city, because we're far enough from the center that the light doesn't quite reach, and the garden is very quiet, and there is the smell of rosemary and damp soil, and faintly, the candles from the dining tables beyond the wall. He doesn't look surprised to see me. Vivienne, he says, just my name, the way he'll say it years later. In a moment I've already lived and cannot stop thinking about. I know you're going to say something formal tonight, I say. I know what's been arranged. I know what everyone expects. I stop. I make myself look at him. I just need you to know that I see you. Whatever you decide, I see you. The silence that follows is the longest of the evening. What do you see, he asks. I think about this. Not because I don't know the answer, but because I want to say it correctly. Someone who's been told what he wants for so long that he's forgotten to notice what he actually feels, I say. Someone who is good at enduring. Someone who should try something else. He is very still. How do you see that, he asks quietly. Because I spent a long time being invisible, I say, and invisible people develop a talent for watching. He turns to look at me then, fully, completely. The way he didn't quite do in the study, and I hold it. I do not look away. I do not make it small. I have to go back, he says. I know. He goes. I stay in the kitchen garden for a while longer, among the rosemary and the dark, letting my heart do whatever it needs to do. The announcement comes at 9:15. Edmund Ashford rises from his seat with the gravity of a man who does everything as though it will be mentioned in a history book. He raises his glass. He speaks about legacy and family and the joining of great houses, which is a genuinely extraordinary thing to say in the 21st century. But Edmund has always been allergic to irony. And then he says, I am pleased to announce that my son Roland has expressed his intention to formally begin courtship discussions with the Calloway family. Not to Celeste specifically. I notice this time. Not I announce his intention to marry Celeste. Just the Calloway family. Courtship discussions. In my first life I heard Celeste. I filled in the word myself. We all did. The table raises its glasses. Celeste smiles the smile she has been practicing. My mother looks for 1 second genuinely moved not by Celeste's happiness, but by the completion of her arrangement. Edmund sits down, satisfied, and Roland, raising his glass at the far end of the table, looks briefly down its length to where I am sitting, not at Celeste. At me, it lasts 1 second, maybe less, and then he looks away. But Iris sees it. I know because I feel her hand close around my wrist under the table, quick, warm, certain. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. The evening winds down slowly. Guests drift from the tables to the garden, to the sitting rooms, to the quiet corners of the house. The music is something ambient and expensive, played by a quartet our mother hired from the city, and it floats through the rooms like weather. I find myself at some point standing in the kitchen with Douglas, who is eating leftover bread from the basket he rescued off table 9, and telling me with complete sincerity about the current state of offshore wind infrastructure. He is, as I suspected, genuinely interesting. He just requires slightly longer than most people to get to the interesting part. He talked to your sister tonight, Douglas says, in the middle of a sentence about turbine depth ratios. Properly talked, I could tell. I wait. She said something to him, he continues. I don't know what, but his face changed afterward. He eats more bread. That hasn't happened in a while. His face changing, I mean. Is that good? I ask. Change is almost always good when someone's been standing still for as long as he has. He looks at me. You went out to the garden. I did, and I told him I saw him. Douglas is quiet for a moment then. That's probably the most useful thing anyone has said to him in years. It needed saying. Most true things do. He finishes the bread. You know this is complicated. I know. The arrangement is real. The families are real. Edmund is not a man who adjusts his plans. I know that too. He studies me with that same careful look he's been giving me all day. I wonder, not for the first time, how much Douglas actually sees. He may be the only person in this whole situation who is watching without any stake in what he finds. You've thought about this for a long time, he says. Not a question. Longer than you'd believe, I say. He nods once, slowly, like this is the answer he expected. Then I'll stay out of your way, he says. And if you need someone to explain to Roland what's in front of him, in plain language without any poetry, I'll call you, I say. He raises the bread basket in something like a salute, and then goes back to his tidal energy. My mother finds me at 11. The house is quieting. Most of the guests have moved to the front rooms or the garden. The kitchen is being cleared. I'm in the hallway by the photographs, the one with Celeste on the lawn, and I'm standing here deliberately, waiting for this moment, because it came in my first life and I didn't handle it well. She comes to stand beside me. She looks at the photograph. She has champagne in her hand and her hair has come slightly loose and she looks older than I usually let myself see, tired in a way that has nothing to do with tonight. It went well, she says. It did, I agree. She looks at the photograph. She'll be happy. She says, with the Ashfords, the stability alone. Mother, I keep my voice very quiet. Are you asking me or telling yourself? She looks at me sharply, and this is the moment. I know it. I feel it. The same moment that happened in my first life, when I said nothing and let her look away and carried that silence for years. Celeste spoke to Roland this evening, I say. Really spoke to him. I think it surprised her, how much she didn't know about him, how much she hadn't thought to ask. I pause. She's not unkind, Mother. She just learned from somewhere that she didn't need to ask. My mother's face does something complicated. She has everything she needs, she says finally. But her voice is quieter now. She has everything you needed, I say. And you gave it to her out of love, I know that. I turn to look at my mother fully. I know you love me. I've always known it. I just need you to know that I needed something different from what you knew how to give. The hallway is very still. My mother sets her champagne glass down on the side table. Her hands, I notice, are slightly unsteady. She looks at the photograph of Celeste on the lawn. Just Celeste, just the roses, and she looks at it for a long time. I didn't know, she says. I know, I say gently. I'm telling you now. She reaches out and takes my hand. She doesn't say anything else. Neither do I. We just stand in the hallway together, holding hands like we haven't done since I was small, with the music floating in from the garden and the weight of 32 years settling, not disappearing, but settling, finding a new shape. 3 weeks after the party, Celeste calls me. It's a Tuesday evening and I'm at my drafting table. Real work? The kind that exists in both my lives. The neighborhood planning project I've been building for months. And my phone buzzes with her name and I answer it. He asked about you, she says without preamble. I set down my pencil. What did he say? He said. A pause, the sound of her exhaling. He said he'd like to meet with the Calloway family, as discussed, and then he asked specifically if you would also be present. I wait. I'm not angry, she says, and I can tell from the quality of her voice that this is true and that she is working out what to do with that. I think I've known since the garden party that the arrangement was. She stops. I think I've known for longer than that. I just didn't have words for it. Celeste, don't, she says, but not unkindly. Don't apologize. You haven't done anything. Another pause. That's the strange part. You existed. You were just there. And somehow that was enough to make everything I'd been performing feel. She stops again. Like a costume, I say quietly. The silence stretches. I was never in love with him, she says finally. I was in love with the idea that someone like him would choose me. That's not the same thing. She sounds thoughtful, not broken, genuinely, carefully thoughtful. Mother's going to need some time. I know, I'll talk to her. You're better at that than I am. You're better at it than you think. A pause. Mish, then do you actually like him as a person? I do, I say honestly. He's been standing still for a very long time, but underneath that, yes, I do. She makes a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. Something between. He'd better be worth it, Vivi. I know, I mean it. He'd better. I know, Celeste. A beat. Then all right. And the warmth in that word, real warmth, unperformed, the kind she keeps underneath the costume, fills the phone line like actual light. All right, then. Roland and I meet at a coffee shop near his office. Not a restaurant, not anything orchestrated. He texted Douglas. Douglas texted Iris. Iris texted me, which is not the most direct communication pipeline in the world, but is, I think, a fair representation of where we all are right now. I arrive first. I order still water and sit by the window where I can see the street, the wet pavement, the ordinary Tuesday afternoon happening without ceremony beyond the glass. He arrives 3 minutes late. He sees me through the window before he comes in and I watch his face. The small adjustment, the quiet arrival of something that isn't quite relief but is adjacent to it. He pushes through the door, comes to the table, sits down without asking if the chair is free. Vivienne, he says, you're late, 3 minutes. He almost smiles. The corner of his mouth very briefly. The server comes. He orders black coffee. We are quiet while we wait for it, which is a different kind of quiet than silences usually are. Not empty, not uncomfortable, just present. 2 people in the same room, not needing to fill it. I spoke to Edmund, he says, when the coffee comes. I wait. He turns the cup slowly. He was not immediately accommodating. I'd expect nothing less from Edmund. He said the arrangement was made with the family's interests in mind. That Celeste. He stops. I told him that Celeste had, as of our last conversation, indicated she would not be proceeding, which is true. How did that go? He didn't speak to me for 4 days. Roland looks up from his coffee. Then he called and said that he supposed I'd better know my own mind, which is the closest my father gets to conceding. I think about Edmund Ashford and his enormous, assembled satisfaction. I think about the way he looked at our house like something to be owned. He'll adjust, I say. Powerful people always do when the adjustment requires them to maintain dignity. Roland watches me. You know, when you say things like that, the way you see how people work. It's not remarkable, I say. It's just attention. Most people don't pay that kind of attention. Most people haven't had the reasons I have. He's quiet for a moment. Outside, a bus goes past, throwing a brief shadow over the window, and then the afternoon comes back pale and clean. I don't know yet what I can offer, he says carefully. I know what I've been told to offer, what I've been built to present. I'm not sure how much of that is actually me. That's honest, I say. It's also somewhat terrifying to say out loud. Yes, I look at him. It usually is the first time. He looks back at me. And there it is again. That quality of attention in his face, the one that stops you, the one that has always stopped me. Full and still and present. I'd like to figure it out, he says. If that's Roland, I keep my voice quiet, even. I've been waiting longer than you know for you to figure it out. I have time. He exhales, slowly, like a man setting something down that he's been carrying for a while. Still water, he says. I'm sorry? You don't drink champagne? Still water or good whiskey? He picks up his coffee. I'm going to remember the things about you, Vivienne. I want you to know that. I look at him for a long moment. Outside, the afternoon continues, ordinary and lit. Good, I say. 6 months later, on a Wednesday evening. We're on the roof of my building. It's the kind of night that arrives in late autumn in this city. Cold but not cruel. The sky above us a specific dark blue that exists only for about an hour before it goes black. And the city spread out below us in all its indifferent light. I have a blanket around my shoulders. Roland is standing at the edge of the rooftop, looking out with his hands in his pockets. Iris is downstairs, having let herself in with the spare key I gave her 6 years ago and apparently hasn't returned since. She's raiding the kitchen, and I've chosen not to find this surprising. Douglas is also downstairs. He called ahead, which is more than Iris did, to ask if he could bring wine, and I said yes. And he brought a very good bottle and now appears to be telling Iris about offshore energy infrastructure, which, from the muffled sounds coming through the roof door, she is engaging with more than I expected. I look at Roland's back, the set of his shoulders, the way he stands when he's actually at rest, not performing rest, not managing the appearance of calm, but genuinely, quietly still inside himself. I've been watching him for 6 months now. Really watching, not from a distance, not through windows, from right next to him. And what I've found underneath the years of enduring, underneath the arrangement and the expectation and the father who didn't know how to ask questions, is someone careful, someone who learned slowly and well, someone who started around week 3 saying things without measuring them first, just to see how it felt, and found, I think, that it felt like something. He turns from the railing and looks at me. The sky behind him is that specific dark blue. The city is loud and far below. The roof is cold in ours. I was thinking, he says. About what? About something you said that night. In the garden. He comes to stand beside me, close enough that our arms are touching through the blanket. You said I'd been told what I want for so long that I'd forgotten to notice what I actually felt. I remember. I've been thinking about it for 6 months. He looks out over the city. I keep coming back to it. What conclusion did you reach? I ask. He is quiet for a moment. The quiet kind, the full kind. I think, he says slowly, that what I feel is this, being here with you, on this particular roof. Without any, he gestures vaguely at everything. Arrangement, that's a conclusion, I say. It's the most honest thing I've come up with. I pull the blanket tighter, not from cold. Roland, I say. I should tell you something. I look out at the city, the lights, the permanent low hum of it. I've known for a long time that you were worth finding. I want you to know that I looked for you on purpose, that this... I pause. None of this was an accident for me. He looks at me. Are you telling me, he says carefully, that you planned this? Not all of it. I say honestly, but the direction of it, yes. The silence that follows is a long one. I feel it the way I feel altitude, a slight pressure, a shift in what's available. And then he says, good. Just that. I turn to look at him. I've spent a long time, he says quietly, being the object of other people's arrangements. He pauses. It's different. When the person who was looking for you is someone you'd have looked for, too, if you'd known how. My chest does something it has been threatening to do for 6 months. You would have, I say. My voice is steady. My hands inside the blanket are not Vivienne. He says my name the way he said it in the garden that night 6 months ago, like something kept and finally released. I've been paying attention to you for longer than I admitted. I just didn't know what to call it. Below us, faintly, we can hear Iris, loud now, fully committed to an argument about something, Douglas's voice underneath hers, measured and amused. Above us, the sky has moved from dark blue to black, and the stars that exist at the edge of the city have started to appear, small and steady and indifferent. I lean against him slightly, just my shoulder against his arm, just the weight of one person acknowledging another. He doesn't move away. He moves closer. For what it's worth, I say quietly, you're doing very well at the not enduring thing. He makes a small sound, low and real and almost a laugh. I have a good teacher, he says. We stand on the roof in the cold, shoulder to shoulder. And the city does what the city does. Keeps moving, keeps breathing, keeps being entirely uninterested in the two of us up here, finally arrived. The door to the roof opens. Iris appears. I've decided, she announces. That tidal energy is genuinely interesting, and I'm furious about it. Are you two done being meaningful because Douglas has opened the wine? Roland looks at me. I look at him. We're done, I say. And for the first time all evening, the real smile, the full one, the one that changes the whole quality of his face, the one that I have been, If I'm honest, patiently and deliberately waiting 6 months to see, I smile back. We go inside.